Welcome to this channel on magnetic energy, principles, applications, technology. This video is about magnetic energy and the hollow earth theory. Let me just start by saying it's fairly common when you have a scientific system like we do right now on our planet where it's very corrupt and it's very governed by monetary values. And money is essentially controlling so much of what's going on our planet right now, which is, of course, a recipe for disaster, as we can all see what's going on around the globe right now. But here's the thing. So when you have a scientific model such as what we currently have, and that is so focused on empiricism, it tends to have this effect of scientists not only having tremendous bias in what they measure, what they try to measure, how they interpret results, how they discount anomalous readings, how they literally will change data that contradicts their current models. And I think that's something that we are probably all subject to some degree. But as we have a shift in consciousness, that type of thinking, and especially as we move into technology and consciousness that essentially does away with scarcity and the need for monetary control, that will allow us to actually truly explore the universe as true scientists, accepting all the different types of results that we get from measurements and the different types of data, and really diving into anomalous data, because that's really where the magic is when you have an anomaly. To explore that's what opens the doors to new discoveries, new paradigms, new scientific models, and everything else. And magnetic energy is kind of a subset of that, at least in our opinion. And so the hollow earth theory, if you will, really works well with the magnetic energy model for a few different reasons. First of all, in the magnetic energy model, we do not require this hard core of compacted matter that becomes hot and is at this incredibly high pressure to generate a gravitational field or a magnetic field around the planet. That's just simply not required in the magnetic model. What we're looking at in the magnetic model is an etheric flow of energy through the planet that doesn't have to be extraordinary degrees, and the planet doesn't have to be super solid with a core that's rotating, and that whole thing that's been built, that whole model that's been built of how planets have formed and everything is completely inconsistent with the idea of interdimensional energy exchange. Our planet is always being fed with interdimensional energy that sustains our very existence. It sustains the ability of molecular structures to hold together. And that model it creates a paradigm, it creates a world that can essentially be ageless, because the energy is being renewed. As the energy comes into the earth and those elements are forming, things are renewed, and you always have an open system that is capable of growing, literally growing. And so in the magnetic model, the planets, as they receive that energy, over time, over millions and billions of years, they slowly are able to grow and expand. And what that ends up doing in the magnetic energy model is makes them have a lot of caverns, a lot of empty space or open space inside of those planets. And that serves some very critical functions from a magnetic energy perspective in terms of polarity and spin rate and everything that's happening around the planet. So if you imagine for a second a gravity circuit that starts at the outer ionosphere and goes into the Earth around, say, 40 miles or so beneath the surface of the Earth, and that circuit kind of stops right there in the sense that it has a feedback loop. So underneath the surface for about 40 miles or so, you get an increased amount of pressure, but beyond that point, the actual polarities reverse. And so if you imagine the interior of the Earth, the vast interior, and has caverns in it, and imagine them being, if the interior of the Earth is like this, the gravity is actually toward the outer part. So it's reversed from what would be on the surface of the Earth. And that gravity field, so you could imagine with magnetic energy technology, it would be a piece of cake, and actually it would be quite successful to be able to live inside the Earth. You could have everything you need. You could have all the fresh water and food and light and everything you need, all the power you need. There's just no limit to what you could do with magnetic energy technology. You could be very successful inside of the Earth. And imagine they would be basically reversed from us, where their ground would feel like our ground. They'd be back to back on each other. I hope that makes sense. And so it also comes down to the way the Earth is spinning, and the vortex, and the way that the magnetic energy moves through the planet and controls that spin rate. And in the center of the planet, how that field essentially expands out in the center of the planet, and then our real gravity circuit that we're used to, that we experience on the surface, how that gravity circuit starts. So there's a couple different dynamics happening in there, and there's some counter-rotating fields. These things from a magnetic energy provide the stability of the planet in rotation, not only for on its own axis, but in its position around the solar system. So there's a lot of energy fields that essentially they harmonize with each other, and they're in what you could call like a harmonic lock or a magnetic lock, just in the sense that as those fields intertwine and they spin, rotating opposite to each other, they really hold well together. And so imagine the interior, the center of the Earth, doesn't need to be a hot molten sea of liquid at all, actually, and it can be relatively hollow. And what it does is it's a different type of pulse rate and magnetic field that is an expression in there that is essentially supporting this idea of moving out. And if you think about if you ever explore free energy technology, and including like our magnetic technology, you'll see one of the common threads of successful units, such as like our Magnegen. One of the common threads of that is hollow core coils, or hollow core transformer cores. And that hollow energy creates this space for an etheric energy expression that is very important. It allows for circulation of energy. It allows for a neutral field to form that can then be transformed into elements. And that elemental expression can come through over time, over millions of years. That could come through volcanic activity that moves those elements out to the surface and creates that slow expansion of the Earth. But the key is thinking that air isn't a wasted space. Like, having open space is not wasted at all. It's actually where a lot of the magic happens when you're talking about working with like etheric technology and etheric energy, and giving that ether a space to essentially express itself and build up in pressure and build up in polarities, and gives us the chance to then harness that energy. So yes, as crazy as that sounds, the hollow earth theory is actually quite consistent with the magnetic energy theory. Now, that being said, not so much with the flat earth theory, although you could, if you had the correct magnetic technology, you could obviously create an entire planet that is essentially flat with a dome over it and all of that whole thing. Yes, you could create that. It would be a very large spaceship, but with magnetic technology, that would be very doable. Although, as a natural expression in the universe, having something that's spherical, that really incorporates those fields around it and the vortices that come in and out of it, at this point, we would probably stick with this more of a spherical model, even though it's not completely out of the imagination that you could have a type of flat earth theory, especially with magnetic technology. So I digress. Anyway, if you think about, and the other thing is, there's a lot of conspiracy around this, and there's a lot of old information about the hollow earth theory. But this idea of the planet, those models that show the holes at the poles and the water flowing in and out and everything, that there's some consistency if you look at that, how it would express in terms of polarities and a gravitational field and magnetic, even north and south polarities, and the inflow and outflow of energy at the poles. There's definitely some logic to that from a magnetic energy perspective. So, and I don't want to embrace too many things with conspiracy, but yes, the hollow earth theory is very plausible from a magnetic energy perspective. And with that, I will see you next time.